Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Baker, and this is Momma Stories. I created Momma Stories after seeing how impactful sharing stories can be in overcoming the challenges of motherhood. I am where I am today because of the stories of so many amazing, strong mamas, and I want to share that with every mom I can. So follow along to laugh, cry, and be empowered. Thanks for tuning in to today's show. Have you heard about how we are changing the story for moms? Momma Fund is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to providing products, services, and education to moms in need. So check us out at mommafund.org. We have a special guest today on the show, and she's actually been on before. So if you remember Erin from episode 14, Erin is back with us today. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Sarah.
I'm so excited to have you back. Not only are you my favorite human for a lot of reasons, but there's a part of your story that we didn't get to share, and
Yes.
I'd love to just dive into that. And maybe, I guess also we should refresh a little bit about your story.
Right.
So you started out with a pretty traumatic birth, your first birth.
I did. Yes.
Okay. And that has led you now to be a doula and
Yes.
to help inform moms all about birth. But your third birth was a little bit more transforming for you. So do you want to walk us through that and how you got there?
Yeah, totally. So, as you said, I had a pretty traumatic first birth with my oldest. Intervention after intervention, leading to an emergency C-section where both of us could have died. And then my second, I really wanted to have a VBAC, and VBAC is vaginal birth after cesarean. But the hospital I was going to didn't even allow them at the time. And so I was just kind of pushed into another C-section. I ended up going into labor early. So, my planned C-section happened a week earlier than planned, because babies come when they feel like coming.
Right.
But the birth was way, way less traumatic. It was very laid back, very calm, way less painful. My first C-section was extremely painful, and being that it was my first C-section, I just thought it had to be painful. And my second one,
there's probably something different between like an emergency where it's rushed, it's not planned, there's
totally
chaos, there's stress, there's tension, and then to something where like you walk in, you know what's going to happen, but also it's like not so rushed from the doctors, the nurses, like that tension in the room isn't there.
Totally. Well, totally. And I think I had an epidural for 12 hours or so, maybe a little bit longer than that by the time I had my first C-section. And so epidurals only last so long, and then they start to wear out. So I think, it was still working, but it wasn't working effectively. And so I felt a lot more than I probably should have. And with Benjamin, my middle son, I had a spinal block. So it was a little bit different than an epidural. It's similar, but slightly different. And so I don't know, that might play into it a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was really lighthearted. I remember we were just joking around. My doctor was hilarious. He would use words like bodacious and stuff all the time. And so we were just cracking up the whole time. So, it was another C-section, but it was very laid back and happy. So a very different feeling than my first one. But when we decided we wanted to have one more, I was pretty set on not having another C-section. The hospital I was at was still not allowing VBACs, and so I had to say goodbye to a doctor that I really loved, and head to a different hospital, which was a really hard decision.
What's their explanation to you as a mom? Like, what does a doctor say to you when you say, I want to have a vaginal birth?
Well, the doctor that I was going to at the time was pretty old school. He had been an OB for 30 or 40 years. So he was an older doctor, and I think it was just mostly old information. They kind of make you feel like your odds of having your uterus rupture skyrocket.
Mm.
once you've had a C-section, and your uterus can rupture in a typical delivery as well. The odds are very small. But I think you have like a 2% chance of that happening just on your first birth. And then if you have had a C-section, it goes to like 5% chance. And then if you've had two C-sections, it's something like 8% chance. So it's not like you go from 2% to 30% chance of rupture. The chance is still pretty small. But that's kind of the driving forces. They don't want uteruses to rupture. So I get
Okay.
it. Yeah, I get it. But the chances aren't strong enough that if you have a healthy pregnancy and you're not high risk, there's really no reason to not allow you to try.
Yeah. Well, and like, I mean, obviously I'm not a doctor, so I can comprehend the risk of that. But if that was to happen during labor, would they then just do a C-section and it would just be another emergency C-section, or is it pretty damaging to mom and baby if that happens?
So a VBAC is actually safer for mom, but
Okay.
a little more dangerous for babies, because if your uterus does rupture, they lose oxygen pretty quickly. So you have to
Oh,
get into a C-section like immediately. So I totally get the fear
sure. Yeah.
surrounding it. But I just felt so like strongly deep in my gut that we could do it.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's amazing. And that right there is like mom instinct at its finest. I love that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we switched hospitals, we switched doctors, and I found an amazing doctor practice that was all women, and they were VBAC friendly. It was kind of rare that they would do VBACs after 2 C-sections, but I looked pretty good. Otherwise, I was healthy. The pregnancy was good. All of that, and you have to, in order to be a candidate for VBAC, you have to have horizontal C-section, previously not a vertical. So most of the time they won't do it like belly button down, unless it's like extreme emergency. So if you had that sort of a C-section, you are not a candidate for VBAC. But since I
Okay.
had horizontal incision, it was fine. So
Which is usually common, right? I mean, I guess I've
yeah,
only
that's like the
experienced,
typical way.
okay, to do it
Yeah,
that
that's
way.
the typical. Yeah, it's way faster to do it the other way. Like, so if you're in like an extreme emergency situation, they'll do it, belly button down, just because the opening's bigger, they can get baby out faster. But most of the time, it's a horizontal incision. So
Okay.
all the things were kind of lining up for me. And my doctor actually ended up being pregnant at the same time as me.
Mm.
And she was trying to have a VBAC. So it was kind of awesome because we were both in the same boat. And she was really understanding of it because that's what she wanted for herself as well. And it also gave me a little bit of peace. Like, I'm making the right decision. If my doctor's trying to do that for herself,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
obviously that's the right thing, right? So that was great. The bummer was that she was a little ahead of me. So she went out on maternity leave, and
Oh no.
yeah, so I knew that it was going to be whoever was on call at the time
Yeah.
was going to deliver, but she was kind of my champion through it. So it was a bummer, excuse me, that she went out before I did. And I had to be reassigned to a different doctor as my primary person. So she just kind of picked someone in the practice. And my first appointment with her was awful.
Oh no.
Absolutely awful. She was such like a negative Nancy. She told me she didn't think I'd be successful. She told me that labor really hurts and you can't have medication and you can't eat and
Why can't you
I mean,
have medication?
well, I don't know. They actually offered for me to have an epidural. So I don't know if she was just kind of fear mongering, but
Oh.
Also, when you are having a VBAC, it's better to be able to feel what your uterus is doing in
Oh,
case of
okay.
rupture. But
Yeah.
so maybe that's why, I don't know. But I was actually planning on going medication free if I could anyway. So I was like already in that mindset because I knew once I got an epidural, my chances of C-section would go up.
Yeah.
So I was gonna try really hard not to have a C-section.
Did you leave
epidural.
that
So that,
appointment changing your mind at all? Like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this, or were you
no,
still on the path?
I was pretty hell-bent.
Yeah.
Pretty hell-bent at that point. And so she actually told me that I needed to talk to every other doctor in the practice and convince them that I could do it before she would sign off on it, which was so like discouraging because my original doctor had told me that like she wouldn't even say I could do it until they had talked to all the doctors in the practice and they had looked over my case and decided it was fine. And they had already given me permission. So it was like 10 steps back, I guess.
That's so
So that was a really,
frustrating. Like,
oh, it was so frustrating.
being a mom and then being pregnant and then wanting to do this like not traditional way of labor and any sorts is just already really hard and challenging. Like, as a doctor, you should be the champion for that mom, and
Yeah,
try to help
totally.
them. Like, it's not your baby or your body. So like, if it's medically possible, like, why not just champion with them?
Right. Yep. I know. I felt the exact same way. Plus, she should have been familiar with my case because they all went over it already. So it was really, it was a discouraging appointment. And I went home pretty frustrated.
Yeah.
But I remember later that night, I was just like, screw it. Like, I'm going to do it. I don't care. Like, this is going to go well. And I'm at least going to try. If I try and I fail, that's fine. I just need the space to be able to try and do it the way that I want to. Like, every
Right.
one of my births has been dictated by everybody else. And I want to be in control of this one. And, that was hard because I'm not one to advocate for myself normally. I'm kind of a roll over and play dead type of person. But through this experience, I really found my voice. And I found, that I could step out and speak up for myself. And so that was a pretty transforming experience, even without the birth piece. Just learning how to stand up for myself was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, really huge for me. So I went on through the pregnancy, meeting all of the doctors. Instead of seeing that doctor, I had to go to every single one. And by this point I was probably, I don't know, 32 weeks along or something like that. So like I had to meet 6 doctors in just a very short amount of time.
Wow.
For her to be able to sign off on it. So I met all the doctors. Some of them were really awesome. Some of them were like, meh, not that excited about my VBAC, but there were 2 that were like so on board. And so I just prayed that when I went into labor, one of them was on call.
Yeah.
I'm like, please let one of those 2 ladies be on call.
I know that feeling. We met a doctor just by like, we needed an appointment and our doctor wasn't there one time. And this guy was like a total just jerk. Like, first off, I'm like, why are you an OB to begin with? Like, I'm so confused what you do here. Like, you're very unkind to these women, or to me at least. Like, what's happening? This is just like not a good feeling. And oh man, I was so thankful when my doctor was on call when I was in labor, because I was just terrifying. And even the next day when we got discharged, he was actually our discharge OB. And the second he walked in the room, I could just like feel the tension. Like, you just don't want that when you're going through birth. Like, you're birthing a human. No. You should be able to pick who's there and who's not there.
Oh, totally. And they can totally set the tone. And really, like, the OB spends like so little time in there during the process. So like, why should they come in and just like destroy all the happy feelings?
Right. For sure. Yeah. Please leave.
Yeah. Scoot.
So yeah, I'm when you went into labor, did you have the doctor you liked?
I sure did.
Oh, yay. Okay.
Like the best ever. Yeah. I went into labor. I was actually playing Chutes and Ladders with my older 2 boys, and they were so rowdy that day. I remember like I just could not contain them. And so I was like, let's play a board game. So we were trying to play a board game, but even that, like, pieces were flying across the board. Like, they were just out of control that day. And so I remember I stood up to like grab one of the pieces that had fallen over, and I felt the pop, and I was like, uh-oh. And I stood up in my water.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Yeah. So I ran to the bathroom, called my husband, told him to hurry home. And my mother-in-law was actually retiring, and it was her last day of work that day. She was retiring because she was going to be our child care, bless her heart. And so I called her, and she was like, "Oh, Erin, I just sat down to my retirement lunch. Like, they took me out to lunch." I'm like, "It's fine. Like, my water just broke, but contractions haven't started. Like, take your time." So that was just funny because she was like, "Oh, of course your water broke. I just sat down to lunch."
Yeah, right. My last day at work, I can't really leave early.
Yep, so funny. So, she did her thing and it was fine. My father-in-law ended up coming early, and he watched the boys while we went to the hospital. But I remember on my way to the hospital, I ate a couple of granola bars because they don't let you eat typically in the hospital. Because of C-section risks, and I knew, you need your energy. And honestly, because I was being a little bit of a stinker, I knew that it would push my C-section clock back a little bit. Oh,
I like that.
Yeah. So I ate a couple granola bars, and when we got to the doctor, we had to go to my office because they wanted to verify that my water had broken. And I started having contractions in the car. So that was awesome because, sometimes your water breaks and nothing happens forever, right? And then you end up with an induction and or another C-section is what would have happened with me. So I had contractions in the car, and I remember the doctor that was there was one of the not awesome ones checking me in. And she asked me when I ate last, and I told her I'd eaten in the car, and she got so mad. Like, I remember she was like, "Why would you do that when you're coming in for a VBAC?" Like, I was like, "Sorry, I was hungry. It was just a granola bar." But she was real miffy about it. And then she also told me, like, the way to have a successful VBAC is not to come with ruptured waters. And I was like, "Lady, it's not like I used a coat hanger and broke my water. Like, It just happened."
Also, like, why discourage me? I'm already here. Like, you can't go back in time. Yep. Gosh, if I could just see that doctor right now, I'd punch her in her face.
I know, I'm with you totally.
So frustrating.
The good part was I had already seen her, so I was kind of prepared for how she was going to be.
Yeah.
And my husband and I laughed, because we had to go to the hospital after that once they saw that my water had broken. So we drove her to the hospital and we were cracking up. Like, she's just mad. It's fine. At least she's not the one at the hospital today.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So it was fine. But so I got to the hospital, and the doctor who was on call was amazing. She came in and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Your water broke. You're having contractions. Things are looking good." And she was like, "Do you want Pitocin?" Which the first doctor, that very first one, also told me I couldn't have Pitocin, which makes sense because you don't want to do synthetic contractions on a uterus that could rupture. Like, it's not the best plan. But she offered it anyways. And I said, "No, thank you. Things are already progressing. We're good." She said, "Awesome." I think it was like 4:00 in the afternoon by this point. And she was like, "I'm just going to let you labor on your own. You do your thing. You walk, you get in the tub, do whatever you want to do. And I won't even check you until like 1 a.m. unless there's a reason to." And I remember I just started crying because that's what I needed. I just needed to be left alone to do my thing.
Yeah.
She was so on board for it. It was awesome.
That's so cool. And so you did labor without any medicine?
I did. Yes.
Wow.
I did. And, it was actually not awful until I hit transition. So, when you're transitioning into, from being in active labor to it's time to push, that was awful. It went from tolerable, but really painful to, "Oh my God, I'm going to die." Yeah. And I remember I was trying so hard not to have that epidural. And I finally, the contractions were just one on top of the other. And I remember telling my husband, "I have to have an epidural. I can't do this for hours more." Because at that point, I didn't even know how dilated I was. I think I was a 4 when I came into the hospital, but I hadn't been checked in hours. Yeah. I think it was 9:00 by then. So I didn't know where I was. And I was I can't do this. So I had the most amazing nurse. She was simply wonderful, and talk about a champion, birth champion. She was it for me. And she said, "Okay, Erin, here's the deal. I know how bad you want to have an unmedicated birth. So let's have you checked. If you're a 7 or more, you have to agree that you're going to push forward with me. And if you're not, then we'll talk about it. And I'm sure that she knew that I had to be 7 or more just based on my behavior. But so the doctor came in and I was 7.5. And I remember I was like, no, like I just wanted that epidural so bad. And I had agreed to it at that point. So but she, like she instantly started stripping me and she was like, you're going to get back in the tub. So she's stripping me. I get back in the tub and
like stripping your membranes, like.
No, my clothes.
Oh, your clothes. I was like,
down.
wow, they're just like going for it up there. You're like, I'm already in labor. Oh, okay. Getting you naked. Got it.
That was a good clarification there. But she just she got me down to my bra and she's like, I want you to get in the tub. So I got back in the tub and I think I was in there for maybe 5 minutes and I just started pushing and she was like, honey, you can't push in here. I'm like, I can't help it. Like, it's just happening. And so I remember she called out to the main room. The OB was out there and she was like, Doctor, I think this is going to go a little faster than we anticipated. And she tried to get me up out of the bathtub, but I'm one of those weirdos that like when I'm in pain, I don't want to be touched. So I was like, I can do it. So I like got myself out of the tub. And she said later, like once you jumped out of the tub like that, I thought, oh gosh, she's just being dramatic because women at that point in transition do not just jump out of the tub. But I had just kind of popped out of the tub, but it took me like probably 3 or 4 contractions just to walk to the bed. Like that's how on top of each other they were. And so I got on the bed and the doctor checked me and she was like, oh my gosh, your tendon, his head's right there. Like there it is. I can see his head.
Wow. Just like minutes later or an hour?
It was like probably between asking for the epidural and when he was born was like 40 minutes. Like,
wow,
it was
amazing.
It was crazy fast. Yeah. I think I pushed for like 8 minutes, maybe. Yeah, probably about 8 minutes. So yeah, I got on the bed, started pushing, baby was out. And, like I think the most absolute triumphant moment of my life was when they put that baby on my chest.
I'm getting goosebumps just listening to this. Oh, it's amazing.
With the boys, with the older boys, I wanted them on my chest so badly. And at the time, the hospital didn't allow skin to skin during a C-section. So like I couldn't hold them. I couldn't anything. And, you've held them for 9 months in your body and then everybody else gets to snuggle them for,
Mm-hmm.
So it was such a different experience because with my first, I had been in labor for 3 days. I was drugged to high heaven. I could hardly keep my eyes open. So like I couldn't even really see him because I was so out of it. My second one, he was right up by my head cooing. My husband held him right by my head, but like I still didn't get to snuggle him for like an hour. So like having Ezra just like right on my chest was like the most heavenly moment of my life.
That just
it was
sounds
absolutely
amazing.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. The only bummer was that my placenta didn't detach. It didn't want to come out. And I have a theory that it probably had adhered to my C-section scar. That's my guess. But she had to go in for it. So that was not comfortable. She was elbow deep.
Oh my gosh. And you have no drugs. Oh.
No, nothing. So that was not fun. And I remember my nurse said, Erin, she can't get it out. And if she doesn't, you're going to have an epidural and go in for a D&C. And I was like, I did not just give birth medication free to get an epidural right now. Like, you have to get it out. I don't care what you do, just pull it. So, but she ended up getting it out the next try. So that was good.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That sounds terrifying and awful.
That was not fun. Yeah, but that was literally the only hiccup in an otherwise absolutely perfect birth. He started nursing right away. I mean, like, just all the things were so perfect. All the things that I really, really prayed for. I really wanted a nurse that was like medication, going without medication friendly, and she was like all in for it. I really wanted this specific doctor. It was her. Like, everything just lined up absolutely perfectly, and it was, honestly, like the thing I'm most proud of myself for was sticking to my guns. Yeah, and going through with it. And it was hard, but it was worth it. And it was like the best way to end my birthing years. I had lost 2 babies right before Ezra, the year before I had Ezra. And so, it was like an arm raising
That's amazing.
hallelujah, we did it
Yeah.
situation. So it was awesome. Yeah.
That's so amazing. I think birth in any fashion is so empowering.
Oh,
And
me too.
every time I hear any of these stories, I'm like, this is amazing. Like, even if it's a traumatic experience, like here you are, like going through the trenches to have this
Right.
baby. Like, how awesome. And then to hear this story as well, like, you totally just stuck to your guns. Cause I get it. Like,
Yeah.
I understand that a hospital's job is not to help you birth in any capacity that makes sense for you. They just want you to have a baby. Like, that's their only goal.
Right.
And so they're going to do
Right.
that, whatever's easiest for them. And I get
Right.
it. Like, I get it. They're busy. It's like autopilot for them. They're birthing babies probably every minute. Like, I get it. But I mean, for you, like, this is so important for you to have this really empowering moment. And it's so cool that you got it and that it all worked out, because it sounds like it was a battle uphill the whole time.
Oh, it totally was. It totally was. And like, I think it's important to listen to your doctor. Like, you need to do your own research. You need to really know what you're getting into, and like, if your doctor is like telling you you're high risk, or like, you need to listen to that. But in my
Sure.
case, everything was normal, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not anti C-section by any means. I had two of them. But for me, it was just not what I wanted. And I just really believe in women being empowered to birth how they choose, whether that's an epidural, whether it's not, whether it's, planned C-section, whatever it is. I just want women to feel empowered at the end of it. And my first two were not empowering
Yeah.
at all. I felt like all of my power was taken by other people. And so to end it on a note where I was in charge was just amazing. And that's what I want for every woman.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, that's the thing. Like, birth is really just like your own journey, and it's whatever you want it to be. And whether it is magical and turns out exactly how you want it or it doesn't, it's still birth, and you still made it a human and all of the great things. Cause I mean, even listening to your story, I'm like, man, I wish I would have not done an epidural. I always have these like random thoughts when I hear all these
Right.
stories of things I wish I could do differently. But if you really think back to your birth experience, even with your first two, at the end, you
Mm-hmm.
have a healthy baby.
Yeah,
And so there is
totally.
like this victory at the end. However, I totally get wanting to do it the way that you
Yeah.
want to and wanting to feel that empowerment. And I think it's so great because now you can help encourage moms. Like, there's probably a mom who's going to listen to this who's maybe about to journey into a VBAC and is going to be like, yeah, I'm going to fight. I'm going to stand strong, which
Right.
is exactly
Yeah.
what
Well,
you
and
should do.
yeah, it totally, fight for what you want and what you can do. And in the end, you said the healthy baby is, the end goal, and I completely agree with that. And that's like the most beautiful piece that I can see awesome pieces all through all three of my boys' births. Like, there's amazingness everywhere. My body grew and made a human.
Yeah,
But leaving the other end traumatized isn't what women should have either.
for sure.
So, uh, especially when it's at the hands of the doctors, like, I didn't need to have all the trauma I had when I was having Isaac. It
Right.
was all because of choices the doctors made, and I just went with it with uneducated. So I just want people to be educated. Like, women just really look into what a normal birth looks like, know what the interventions are, know ahead of time what you're okay with and what you aren't, because it's so hard in the moment to make a decision when you've got people pressuring you and you don't really know anything about whatever that intervention is. So just knowing going into it that birth doesn't always go as planned, and you need to know what you want to do going into it is like the biggest thing.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this has obviously transformed you into becoming a doula, which I know we talked a
Yeah.
little bit about in your first episode, but since then you've been a part of some births.
Yeah. Two, actually. I think I did two births basically back to back. I had two friends who were due to have babies the same week. So I took a week off work, and they ended up having their babies like literally back to back. I think I was at the first one for 20-ish hours, maybe a little longer than that. No, it was way longer than that. I'm lying. It was like 30 hours. And then I went
Oh
home,
my
went to
gosh.
bed. got a call at 4 a.m. for the next one, was that one for like 10 or 11 hours, and then came home to my son's birthday party.
Oh, that's
crazy.
right. I remember you telling me that.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy.
But so good. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yep. And one was a hospital birth. One was a home birth. Both of them were absolutely beautiful. One had an epidural. One obviously didn't. But both women were completely respected in their choices. And, that's the important part.
Yeah. I know you doulas are all just so amazing. I love myself a doula.
I think we need doulas for like every part of life, really. Like, can I have my kids going to kindergarten doula? Can I have
yes.
Like we all need support through our lives for all sorts of reasons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. Oh man, you should maybe create that.
Yeah, maybe I should.
I feel like that's a great idea. I mean, I'm moving right now. I could use like a moving doula who just like comforts me through the whole process.
I love it.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, Erin, I can't thank you enough for one, being on the show already and coming back again to share this story, which I think is so great that it worked out like this, because I believe this story deserves its own space. I think it's so good.
Thank you.
And I know I've said this before, potentially on Instagram, but I just want everyone to know how amazing you are, because ever since we've connected through this amazing community, I just can't express how encouraging you've been to me and how you've let me bounce ideas off of you and all sorts of things. And I think women need more friends like you in their lives. And unfortunately, they're hard to find. And so I'm so thankful that I found you. I think you're so awesome.
Well, you're so sweet. Thank you. And I feel the same way about you. I just love what you're doing. And, your heart is my heart here. Like, women lifting each other up is like the absolute goal. And I love it.
Yes, I love that. Well, before we go, I guess there is one question I have for you, because I end every episode the same. I feel like you might have already given some really good advice, obviously, but what's your one piece of advice for a mom that's maybe either debating VBAC, or maybe she just had a C-section and is feeling discouraged? Like, what's the one thing you want them to take away from that?
I think the biggest thing is to just advocate for yourself, like really learn to do that. And education's key, right? So like, if you're educated in what's going on with your body, or, educate yourself in VBAC statistics, educate yourself in, what it takes to do a VBAC, educate yourself in what are the odds for you personally, because there's all sorts of things that go into if they think that you're going to have a successful VBAC or not. What's your weight? What's your BMI? Have you had a live birth or a non-C-section birth before? All those things. So like really know all of those things going into the doctor, because the more knowledge you have going in, the more likely you are to be successful. And then just reach out to people who have gone through it and ask questions. I think that's the biggest thing, is like, I had to reach out to people who had VBACs and say like, okay, what about this? What about that? What did you think about this? And that was huge for me, was talking to other moms and hearing their stories. So, I'm always happy to talk to anyone about it.
Awesome. Well, Erin, I think you're amazing. And again, thank you.
I think you're amazing.
Thank you for taking the time to be on again.
Thank you for having me again.
Of course. Thank you for listening. I hope you loved it. Please subscribe to this podcast so you can get the latest episodes, and tell us what you think about it in the reviews. And mamas, I love you.